Hello, welcome to FluteTube. Today I'm planning to tell you all of the hacks that I used going to college as a music major in order to save money. And as I've been thinking through this topic, I've realized that it's quite a large one. So I'm actually going to do two videos. Today I'm going to talk about my own story, what I did going through college, and then next week I'll talk about more general strategies that are out there to use, because of course I didn't use every strategy and I went to college a long time ago. It's only gotten more expensive since then, so a lot of people have thought about this topic and come up with great ideas that I'm going to share with you. I'll tell you up front that I did not choose the cheapest possible way that I could to go to music school, but I did absolutely consider my return on investment. If it would have put me in $100,000 of student loan debt to attend Juilliard, I would not have gone there because I would not have trusted the ROI to be good. I do think for musicians, and I'm sure people in some other fields as well, that it's still really important to consider not only the price of your education, but the future professional and employment opportunities that that education will bring you. Do think about what you're going to get out of your education at each given institution as best that you can, and also think about how it's going to look on a resume. Where you attend music school really is an important choice, and I personally don't advocate that you simply pick the cheapest way to do it. Now that you understand my take on this topic, let's go ahead and talk about the strategies that I used to beat the system and do things more cheaply than I was expected to do it. I want to insert a quick note here, which is that I'm going to be talking about money a lot, but it's old money that I spent many years ago. So I found an inflation calculator and I'm going to give you the best inflation adjusted numbers that I can. That way you'll understand what I'm talking about more in today's number of dollars. Going back to ways that I saved money on college, I would say the very first thing I did that was really important is that I took a lot of AP classes. I had 5 classes that gave me credit to take with me to Oberlin. They were English, calculus, AP American History and European History, and Chemistry. And those 5 classes together gave me enough credits that when I arrived at Oberlin, I was technically a sophomore rather than a freshman. It was my dream to attend Oberlin, and the reason is that I wanted to, first of all, study with the flute professor there, Michel Dubost, but I also wanted to do their double degree program. If I'd finished that program, I would have graduated with a BA in Mathematics and a B.M. in Flute Performance. Shaving off that extra 5th year of study and coming out of Oberlin with 2 degrees felt like a great ROI to me. I want to say one thing about AP classes while we're on this topic. If you're going to take them, which I hope many of you in high school do, try to actually make them count. I've seen many students come through the system who have a lot of AP credits, and yet I have almost never seen a student actually get through college any quicker as a result of having all those AP credits. Think ahead, look at how you can actually use those credits, because to take those tests and pass them, you do have to pay something. You might as well get the benefit of having those credits and shave a semester or a year off of your time in college. Unless you have a surplus of money and time, which is great, but then why exactly are you watching this video? The second thing I would say that I did to minimize college expenses is that I worked all the way through college. I heard about a study right before I started to attend Oberlin that said if you work too much, maybe 20 hours or more a week, then it's really hard. But if you work fewer hours, say 10 to 15 hours a week, it can actually help you to succeed in your studies because you have to be more organized. You have to develop a schedule around your classes and your work hours, and it just gives you a great framework to be disciplined. As soon as I arrived at Oberlin, I signed up for work study, and I did quite a variety of work study jobs, although I did pass up the nude modeling for art class that was a possibility. But I washed dishes in a dining hall, I sorted mail and put mail in student mailboxes in the mailroom, I graded math papers, and I also found a few random music jobs to do, some students here and there and some music gigs. My average hourly pay from the work study jobs was right around $5, and that's not much, but it was plenty for me on top of the savings I had from high school. That was all that I needed to cover my expenses since I was being fed at the dining hall and I had a roof over my head at the dorm. I also joined a dining co-op my second year at Oberlin where students pool together, they plan and cook their own meals, and I was in a vegetarian co-op. So that saved me money as well. That was a bit cheaper than continuing to eat at the dining hall. The next big thing I did though to save money at college, sadly, is that my family and I looked at Oberlin and the expenses to attend, and we decided realistically that it was not worth the return on investment for me to stay my last 2 years and finish both of my degrees. I had a National Merit Scholarship in the college and I had a Merit Scholarship in the conservatory. But Oberlin is a school that first considers what they believe your family can afford to pay, and then they give you student loans, and then they give you scholarship to cover the rest. While 2 years at Oberlin had been wonderful for me and I would have on my resume forever, my family and I decided that 2 more years was more than we could afford. So I switched schools. I had some connections who helped me get into Cincinnati College-Conservatory of Music with a really great deal. It saved me a ton of money because I started to live off of campus, and Procter & Gamble is right there in Cincinnati and heavily sponsors the music school there. So there are many students at CCM who are on full scholarship. And I believe that's still true, that CCM is a great deal financially compared to many other music schools. There were other great things that move to Cincinnati did for me. It helped me to graduate more quickly because CCM made me choose between my degrees. I could not do both math and music. Well, of course I was going to choose music. The other thing that helped me to graduate more quickly is that when I arrived, as every transfer student does, I had to take a lot of placement tests, and I placed out of all of the history and theory and oral skills classes that it was possible to test out of. So I quickly realized all I needed to graduate was a conducting class to do my senior flute recital and a bunch of music electives. I realized that with the support of the faculty and administration, which I had, I could easily graduate in 1 year instead of 2 so that I could do my entire undergraduate degree in 3 years. Also, once I left Oberlin, I went to bigger cities and I found a lot more opportunities to earn money doing music. In Cincinnati, I did a lot of gigs, and I also found 3 high schools that hired me to come after school and teach all the interested flute band students who wanted lessons. That meant that I ended up with about 20 private students and a good number of gigs. I leased a car from my parents so that I could drive around and do all this teaching and all these gigs. The last huge money gift that Cincinnati gave me is that it enabled me to do my master's degree in 1 year instead of 2. I realized around October or November that I would be able to graduate from CCM after just 1 year as an undergraduate, and I went to talk to my flute professor about it, and he was not that pleased. He said, I went through a lot of efforts to get you great scholarship at kind of the last minute, and I don't want you to now just instantly go somewhere else. I don't want to write you letters of recommendation. And I thought, well, it's true, I just barely arrived here. So I stuck around for my master's degree at Cincinnati. But again, I was able to shave off a year because again, when you start a new degree, you take placement tests, and I did study for those tests because I knew that that could save me time and money if I didn't have to take all of those classes. Once I had the results that I'd tested out of all of those things, I realized that if I did 2 recitals in 1 year, plus my oral exam, I could finish my master's degree in a year. When it came time to apply for doctoral programs, I applied to both Manhattan School of Music and Juilliard and a couple other schools. I decided that I was only going to apply for very top doctoral programs. For myself personally, I decided the return on investment would only be worth doing a doctoral degree if it didn't cost me too much and if I could go to a really top music school. And happily, my top choice was Juilliard, and I got in. And because their doctoral program is so well funded, I did not have to pay tuition as a student at Juilliard. And in fact, living in New York was a pretty good deal for me. I did not have a car ever while I lived there. And as I mentioned in the last video, I always split a single bedroom apartment with someone else. So 2 of the apartments that I stayed in, I paid $600 to split it. And then I moved quite far up north in Manhattan to Inwood, and that apartment to split it was $260 a month. Juilliard was a great return on investment for me from the beginning. I did in fact do some work study at Juilliard. I worked in the library for a little while, but I also quickly found a lot of students and a lot of really great gigs in New York City. I also liked to play little games with myself to save money. One of the big ones was subway fare, because there was no discount at the time for buying a bunch of fares. It was just always $1.50. I walked a lot, which was great to keep me in shape. And also, for 1 year, I lived on the Upper East Side across Central Park from Juilliard. The transportation is a little difficult from there, but the walk across the park is beautiful. So I would often walk rather than taking the subway or the bus. And there was a pizza place on street level of the apartment building where I was living, where you could get a pretty big, fairly healthy slice of pizza for $1.50. If I walked home and I wanted a slice of pizza for dinner, I could have it. If I did not walk, no pizza for me. I did take out the full amount of federally subsidized student loan that I was eligible for my first 3 years at Juilliard, because I did not want to ask my parents for any money. So I took out $8,500 in student loans each of those 3 years. But my third and fourth years at Juilliard, I really was doing a lot of professional work. And I'm really glad that when I was about 3.5 years through my time at Juilliard, I walked down the street to the Schwab building that was there. I took the rest of the student loan money I had, which I knew I wouldn't need to spend, and it was about $4,000, and I set up an account and invested it through Schwab. That $4,000 grew pretty quickly to about $9,000. So when I left Juilliard for my university job, I took out a good portion of that to make a good down payment on a car. I remember when I did my taxes just before I left New York, so it was for the calendar year 1999, I was a bit in awe that I realized I'd made about $25,000 that year as a freelance musician in New York. I wasn't living like a rich person, but I was able to support myself. And that's a really great thing to think about, by the way, when you're considering where you want to go to music school, especially for graduate school. If you want to think about performance opportunities, real gigs where you're going to get paid, accumulating a studio of great students, a city can often do a lot more for your career. So just another thing to keep in mind as you're looking at music schools. And then about the same time that I filed those taxes in April of 2000, I was offered my full-time professor job at Brigham Young University, where in fact I still am today. That was the last really great money decision that I made as a student. I was nearly done with my doctoral degree, and I felt very torn leaving New York, but all these mentors that I had told me, this is a real job, you should take it. So I took that full professor job when I was 25, and you can tell from my story that I kind of zipped through college. Some people have asked me if I did that on purpose, if it was my goal to be the youngest person doing this or that, and it really was not. I could not have foreseen the path that I would take through school. It's just, I saw opportunities to cut down on my time in various ways, and each time I saw an opportunity, I took it. And it saved my family and myself not only a lot of time, but tens of thousands of dollars to go through my degrees and get those credentials on my resume, and yet shave off as much time as I could in the process. The last decision that I'll talk about, because really it's technically past my college days, when I took my professor job and I was 25, I figured I'm going to continue to live like a student, and that's what I did. I moved into a house with some old high school friends. It was a house with 5 bedrooms, and I rented 1 bedroom, and I paid $315 a month in rent. I got a new car, but it was a Nissan Sentra, the most basic Nissan Sentra I could find. It was manual transmission, manual locks and windows, a tape deck. It cost about $16,000, and as I say, I pulled out some of my invested student loan money that had grown quite nicely and used that to make a good car down payment. This meant that after those 3 years of continuing to live like a student, even though I had a real full-time job that was paying about $50,000 a year at that time, I was able to get out of all of my student loan debt. The grand total from my 2 years at Oberlin and my New York money that I took out for living was $31,500. I got rid of that in 3 years. I paid off my new car. I also bought a new flute for $11,000, which I paid off. And at the end of that 3 years, I made a down payment on my first home. Obviously, we all have our own unique paths through life. And as I say, I could not have predicted that mine would work out this way. But if we look at the basic things that I did to try to save myself as much money as possible, the main one was to shave off time from my degrees. I also worked while I was in school so that I wasn't just accumulating debts. I was paying as I went to the best extent that I could. I also like to play little money-saving games with myself. I didn't want it ever to be torture to try to save money, but I wanted to save money in fun ways. And then another really important thing I did is that I made a point to attend schools that would give me an excellent return on investment. And because I was careful to go to these schools with excellent ROI, I was able to come out of my schooling with really excellent employment. I hope this talk today gives both future music majors and their parents some hope that they can go to great music schools and go on to great music careers without first getting into too much student loan debt. As I say, I know this is such a huge topic. Next time we'll continue, and I won't talk so much about myself. I'll talk more about general strategies to save on college and music school attendance. There are lots of great ideas and strategies out there to hopefully cut down significantly on the cost of attending college or music conservatories.